Hello everyone, this is SyntaxError and welcome back to another tutorial. So in today's tutorial, we are going to be looking at coding a Spirit Sceptre. Just a quick note, this video is kind of long, so there are indeed timestamps in the description, so you can go down there and just skip ahead to whichever section you want to skip to. So this item is actually from Hypixel Skyblock. So if we go ahead and run this command /give Spirit Sceptre, you will actually see that it will pop out a Spirit Sceptre on the ground for us to pick up, and it is actually not stackable, just like in Hypixel Skyblock. So for example, if we go ahead and summon a Ravager, since it has custom damage, it can basically one-shot the Ravager. And if we go ahead and check out the item ability, on right click it will shoot out a bat, and we can actually control the bat and determine where we want it to land. So let's get straight into the coding then. For the coding part, we're going to go ahead and create a new Java class, and we're going to call it item manager. Then we can go ahead and create an item stack first. So we're going to type public static item stack, and we are going to put Spirit Sceptre. Then now we're going to create a public static void, and we're going to call it init, which basically stands for initialization, and we're just going to leave it as it is for now. Then we're going to type public static void, and we're going to call it create Spirit Sceptre. This is where we are going to be creating how our item will look like. So we're going to type item stack item equals to a new item stack, and in the brackets we're going to put its material, which in this case would be an alien, and we're going to put its amount as 1. Then we are going to get the item meta, so item meta equals to item.getItemMeta. Now we're going to set the display name of the item, so we're going to type a meta.set display name, and in the brackets we're going to put speech marks and go into this color code website. The link will be down below in the description. Then we're going to get the color code for the color gold, and we're just going to copy that and paste it in. Now we're going to call the item Spirit Sceptre. Then we're going to move on to create a lore now. So we're going to type list string, and we're going to call it lore equals to a new array list. So angle brackets and our normal brackets, then import both array list and list. Then we can move on to adding the lore now. So lore.add, and then the lore is going to take quite a bit of time because we are going to be adding line for line of lore from the actual skyblock item. So we're going to change the 6 to 7 in the color code for gray in color, and we're going to type damage. Then we're going to paste it back in and change the 6 to a C for red in color. Then we're going to put plus 180. Then we're going to add an empty line of lore. Now we're going to type lore.add again and paste back the color code and type item ability colon guided back. And we're going to paste in our color code again, but change the 6 to E for yellow color and type right click. Then we are going to create another line of lore and paste in the color code, change the 6 to 7 and type shoots a guided spirit bat, comma lore.add for following your aim and exploding, lore.add for paste in the color code again and change the 6 to C for red 2000 and change it to 6 for gray damage, and we're just going to put a full stop. Then we're going to create an empty line of lore and put a semicolon. Then we're going to type lore.add and put in our color code again, and this time we're going to paste in another color code, but we're going to change the 6 to L for bold font. Then we're going to type legendary dungeon sword. And finally, the last step for our lore would be to do meta.set lore as lore. Now we're gonna create a custom damage for our item. So we're gonna type attribute modifier, and we're gonna call it damage equals to a new attribute modifier, and in the brackets we're gonna type uuid dot random uuid, comma, speech marks generic dot attack damage, and we're gonna move outside of the speech marks and place a comma and put the damage amount, which in this case will be 180. And then we can put another comma and type attribute modifier dot operation dot add number. Then we're going to put comma and put its equipment slot as a hand. Now we're going to do meta dot add attribute modifier, and we're going to put attribute dot generic attack damage, comma damage, and put our semicolon. And now we're going to move on to add item flags. So meta.add item flag, item flag dot attribute dot hide attributes. Basically what the item flag does is that it's going to hide the attribute from whenever the player hovers over the item, so the player won't be able to see it. Now we're going to do meta.setItemMeta as meta, and then we are going to put Spirit Sceptre equals to our item. Now we can move back into our initialization class and type create Spirit Sceptre and move on to our main class and type item manager dot, that's the wrong one, item manager dot init. And we are done with the item creation, so we're going to move on with the commands now. For the commands, we are going to go ahead and create another new Java class, and this time we are just going to name it commands. Now as usual with a commands class, we'll need to type in implements command executor. That's the wrong spelling. And then after we do that, we can go ahead and create a public boolean and call it on command. Then in the bracket, we can type command sender, comma, command, cmd, comma, string label, comma, and finally, string square brackets args. Then we can go ahead and import command sender and command. Then we can go ahead and put our curly brackets. So first of all, we're going to check whether or not the person that sent the command is a player or not. So we're going to type if an exclamatory mark for the opposite of sender instance of player. So this, if the sender is not a player, we are going to send a message to sender. So sender.send message, only players can use that command. And then we can return true. Then we're going to create an else statement. So this will run if the sender of the command is a player. So we're going to type player equals to bracketed player sender. Then we're going to check whether or not our player is opt or not. So we can type if player dot is opt. Then if they are opt, we're going to get the command that they have sent. So cmd dot get name dot equals ignore case, and in the brackets you can put our speech marks, give Spirit Sceptre. Then we're going to check if the command is give Spirit Sceptre. We are going to do player dot get world dot drop item naturally, player dot get location, and item manager dot Spirit Sceptre. And the reason why we are dropping it at the player's location and not directly adding it into the player's inventory, we're going to be covering that in the items function later. So then we are just going to create an else statement. Just if the player is not opt, we're just going to send them a message. So sender.send message, you are not allowed to use this command. Then we can go ahead and return true. So that's done. Now we can go into our main class and just list our command. So we can go ahead and do this dot get command, and then over here we are going to type in whatever we typed here. So we are just going to copy and paste that in, just so that we do not make any spelling mistakes. Then we can type set executor and put in new commands. The commands is basically the name of the commands class. Now we can move on into our plugin.yml and list it again. So we can type commands and put our colon, and we are going to type the command which is give Spirit Sceptre. Again, it has to be the same as whatever we typed in our commands class over here. Then we can put the description as gives a Spirit Sceptre to the player, and its usage as /_ command. So that's the commands done, and now we can move on with the items function. For the items function, we're going to go ahead and create a new Java class, and we can go ahead and call that Spirit Sceptre. Then we can type implements listener. Now we're going to create a constructor first, so we can type in the name of the plugin, which in this case is Spirit Sceptre item. Then we can type plugin with our semicolon. Then we can type public and the name of the class, which is Spirit Sceptre. And then we can put our brackets and put in the name of the plugin again, so Spirit Sceptre item plugin. Then put our curly brackets and type this dot plugin equals to plugin with our semicolon. Now we can move on to our add event handler. So you can type add event handler and put in public void on shoot. And in the brackets, we're going to put in player interact event. Then we're going to check if our player is right clicking or not. So we're going to type if event.getAction dot equals to action dot right click error, or event.getAction dot equals to action dot right click block. Now we're going to go ahead and check if the player is holding a Spirit Sceptre or not. But before we compare the lores, we're going to check whether or not the player is actually holding an item, and if the player's held item has lore or not, because we do not want it to spam our console with null pointer exceptions. Then we can type event.getPlayer.getInventory. Now this is where things get slightly lengthy. .get, that's the wrong one. .getItemInMainHand. .getItemMeta is not null. And event.getPlayer .getItemInventory .getItemInMainHand .getItemMeta .getLore is not null. Now I'm just going to press enter so it's slightly easier to see. And event.getPlayer .getInventory .getItemInMainHand .getItemMeta .getLore .contains, and over here we can go ahead into our item manager and select a line of lore that is unique to the item. So in this case, it's going to be item ability guided bat right click. So you can go ahead and copy and paste that into the if statement. Then we can put our curly brackets. Now we are actually going to spawn in a bat at the player's location. So we can type bat equals to bracketed bat event.getPlayer.getWorld.spawn, and in the brackets we can type event.getPlayer.getLocation, and then we can put the type of entity that we want to spawn in, so bat.class. Then we can put our semicolon, and now we are just going to set up the bat. So bat.setAwait, because we do not want the bat to be sleeping, to set await as true, so it's going to fly. Then bat.setAI as false, so the bat does not move by itself. Bat.setSilent as true so that the bat does not make any squeaky noises. Bat.setInvulnerable as true so that the bat cannot be damaged by a player. Then we can go ahead and type in event.getPlayer.getWorld.play sound so that we are just going to play the blaze shooting sound at the player's location. So event.getPlayer.getLocation. Then we can type comma sound.entity blaze shoot. Then put comma again and put the volume and pitch as 5. Then we can put in our semicolon. Then we can create a new BukkitRunnable. Basically what a BukkitRunnable is, it acts like a timer or a loop that runs every few ticks. So we can go ahead and create that and type public void run and put our brackets and curly brackets. Then we are going to create a vector. Then we have to import the correct vector, which is org.bukkit.util and not java.util. So we're going to import that and type it. We're going to call it I equals to event.getPlayer.getILocation.getDirection. So we're just going to get where the player is facing. Then we are going to go ahead and type location equals to bat.getLocation.add I. Then we are going to go ahead and set the pitch and yaw of the location because we want the bat to face wherever the player is facing as well. So we can go ahead and type location.setPitch as our event.getPlayer.getLocation.getPitch. Then now we can go ahead and do the same thing for the yaw. So location.setYaw event.getPlayer.getLocation.getYaw. Now that's done. The last thing that we can do is just bat.teleport to the location. So that's the bat movement done. Now we can move on with the damage that the bat is going to deal. And now the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to type in string lore equals to event.getPlayer.getInventory.getItemInMainHand .getItemMeta .getLore and .get5. And the reason why we're getting the 5th element of the lore to deal the damage is because if we go back into our item manager and we count up, so the 0 1 2 3 4 5 0 1 2 3 4 5, we can actually see that the 5th element of the array contains the damage that the item will deal. So we are going to get the damage through the lore and not just preset it, because in future, if we do have a custom damage system, we can actually just update the lore of the Spirit Sceptre and not have to worry about dealing the damage anymore. So we can go ahead and create a list first to get the damage that it's going to deal. And we're going to call it loresplit equals to a new ArrayList. And in the brackets, we're going to type Arrays.asList lore.split. And the rejects is going to be a space. And the reason why we are doing this is because we are just going to import all of these first. Is because if we go ahead and look back at our item manager, we can actually see that each word is separated by a space. So we want only this one and not anything else. So we're going to separate the string into different words by the space. Now we're going to get the damage. So string damage equals to loresplit.get1. And the reason why we are doing this is because if we go back into our item manager, this will be 0 in the array list, this will be 1 in the array list, and this will be 2. So we can actually see that the damage is number 1 in the array list. Then we can do damage equals to damage.replace Then inside our brackets, we're going to type our target first. So we can go ahead and copy the color code C, and we're going to paste that in. And then comma, we're going to replace the color code with nothing. So we're basically removing it. And then we can go ahead and do the exact same thing for the comma. So damage equals to damage.replace the comma with nothing. So we end up with just the number of the damage alone. Then we are going to create two new variables. So we're just going to create an int and call it total enemies, if I can spell, equals to 0, and double total damage equals to 0. This will be used when we are sending the chat message later. So now we're going to create an if statement for to check if the bat is hitting a block. So if the bat.getTargetBlock exact as 1 is not equals to null, and exclamation mark for the opposite of bat.getTargetBlock exact 1 dot is passable. And basically what this line of code does is that it's going to check if the block directly in front of the bat is not air, and if the block directly in front of the bat is not passable. By a passable block, it just means that a player can pass through it, for example, flowers and grass. Then now we are going to create an enhanced for loop. So for entity colon bat.get nearby entities. And then in the brackets, we're going to type 6, and I'm not going to say the last number. And the reason why we are putting this is because get nearby entities is basically just gets all the entities around our bat in a box. So in this case, the box will be 12 blocks on the x-axis, 12 blocks on the y-axis, and 12 blocks on the z-axis. Then now we are going to check if the entity is instance of living entity, and then we are going to convert the entity to a living entity. So living entity equals to bracketed living entity. And the reason why we are converting it into a living entity is because entities include things such as boats and minecarts, which do not have health, so we have to convert it into a living entity, which only includes entities such as zombies and skeletons that actually have health. Now we're going to run another if statement, and we're going to type exclamatory mark entity living entity dot equals to our event.getPlayer. Then we're going to put an ends, and we forgot our brackets, and exclamatory mark with our brackets living entity instance of bat, and exclamatory mark living entity dot sai, and living entity dot is silent, and living entity dot is invulnerable. And I'm just going to press enter over here just to make things slightly easier to see. And basically what this does is that it checks if the living entity is not our player that shot the bat, and if the living entity is not the bat, themselves. So if it's not the player and it's not the bat, we are going to damage it. So living entity dot damage, and this time we are going to refer back to the damage that we got just now. The living entity dot damage double dot parse double damage. Then we can go outside and type in event.getPlayer, which basically just sets the killer to the damager to the player. Then we can go ahead and do total enemies equals to total enemies plus 1, and then we can add the damage to the total damage. So total damage equals to total damage plus double dot parse, that's That's the wrong one. Double dot parse double damage. Then we can put our semicolon. Now we're going to create an if statement outside of our enhanced for loop. So if our total enemies is not equals to 0, we are going to send the player message. So event.getPlayer.send message, and the message will be chat. This is going to be kind of long, so just stay with me. ChatColor.gray plus your bad stuff hit with a space plus chatColor.red plus total enemies plus chatColor.gray plus space enemies for space again plus, I'm just going to enter here just to make things slightly easier to see, chatColor.red plus number format dot get number instance, and inside the bracket you're going to type locale.us dot, and outside brackets we're going to type dot format, and inside bracket we're going to type total damage, and then we are going to plus chat color dot gray again plus a full stop. Yeah. Okay, basically what this does, the rest are pretty self-explanatory. What this does is that basically it just converts our total damage into a string, and it will add a comma every 1,000. Now we can go outside of our if statement and we can go ahead and type bat.getWorld.spawn particle.explosion huge, comma bat.getLocation, comma 10. So this just spawns the particles in of an explosion. Then we can go ahead and do bat.getWorld.playSound, and then we're going to put bat.getLocation, comma sound.entity generic explode, and we're going to put the volume and pitch as 5 and 5. Now we are just going to remove the bat, so bat.remove, and cancel the BukkitRunnable so that it doesn't keep on running. Now we are going to move on with the damage that's going to be dealt if our bat hits an entity. So we're going to create a list, and we're going to put entity in the angle brackets, and we're going to call it within. That's the wrong spelling, completely wrong spelling. Within entities equals to bat dot get nearby entities 111. Then we can go ahead and do within entities dot remove event dot get player, so that it does not count the player inside. Then we're going to create an enhanced for loop. So entity within entity colon within entity. So it's going to loop through every single element, every single entity inside of our list. Then we're going to check if within entity instance of living entity, then we are going to convert it into a living entity. So living entity, and we're going to call it living within entity. Yeah, the name's kind of long, equals to bracketed living entity within entity. Then we're going to put our semicolon, and we're going to check if our living within entity is a bat, and if it does not have AI, and if it is silent, living within entity dot is silent, and if our living entity living within entity dot is invulnerable. So basically we are just going to remove the entity if it's our bat. So within entities dot remove within entity. So it's gonna remove the entity if it's the bat that we spawned in earlier. Then we're gonna go outside of our for loop and we are gonna check if within entities dot size is more than or equals to 1. Then we're gonna run another enhanced for loop and type entity. Actually you do not need to redo this entire process, otherwise the video is gonna take forever. You can basically just copy and paste the exact same lines of code from our codes earlier and just paste it in because it's gonna do the exact same damage. Then now the last step would be to do to go outside of our new BukkitRunnable and just type run task timer bracket plugin, which is why we needed our constructor earlier, 0l and 1l. Basically the 0 and 1 are ticks, and just a note, there are 20 ticks in a second. So that's all the damage done. Now we can go outside of, we are just going to minimize this just to make things slightly simpler. Now we can move on with another add event handler and type public void on damage. This is so that we can remove all the damage that is dealt to our spirit bat, because although we set it to invulnerable, it can still be damaged by splash potions and TNT. So we're just going to do that and type entity damage event, well, curly brackets, and we're gonna get the living entity first. So living entity equals to bracketed living entity event.getEntity. So this is gonna get the entity that was damaged. Then we're gonna check if the living entity was our spirit bat. So living entity instance of bat, and if it does not have AI, so if living entity dot has AI, and if it is silent, so living entity dot is silent, and finally we're going to check if it's invulnerable, so living entity dot is invulnerable. Then we are just going to cancel off all the damage, so event dot set cancel as true. Now we are going to move on with another event handler. So at event handler public void on place block place event. Now we are going to check if the player right clicks our Spirit Sceptre, and the reason why we have to use the block place event is so that just in case if he places the Spirit Sceptre, we do not want him to place it, so we're just going to remove it. So now we're going to check if the player is holding a Spirit Sceptre or not. So we can just go ahead and copy this if statement from our onShoot class and just paste it directly in, and then we can go ahead and do event.setCancel as true. Now we're going to move on with another event handler. Yes, there are a lot of event handlers here. I'm going to type public void on click and put inventory click event. And now why we are running the inventory click event is because we want, you know how in Hypixel Skyblock the Spirit Sceptre is not stackable, so we are going to do that right here. So we're going to check if the event dot get current item is not null, and event dot get current item dot get item meta is not null, and event dot get current item dot get item meta dot get lore is not null. We are just doing all these null checks because we need to make sure that it is not null, otherwise it will spam our console with null pointer exceptions. Then we can type n again, event dot get current item dot get item meta dot get lore dot contains. Over here we can go ahead and check with the unique lore to our item, which that's not the right one. which in this case would be the item ability, and we can paste that right in. Then we can do that. Now we are gonna get the item meta of the item. So item meta equals to event.currentItem dot get item meta. Then we're going to create a namespace key. So namespace key, and we're just going to call it key, equals to a new namespace key. And over here, we can type plugin, and we are going to do string dot value of math dot random. So it's going to generate a random number and place it on our item. And it won't be visible, so we don't have to worry. Then we can just do meta.get current tag container. I mean meta.get custom tag container dot set custom tag as our key, comma, item tag type dot double, comma, math dot pi. Then we can go ahead and import item tag type. So basically it's just going to place the random number on our item, and we don't have to worry about it because it will be invisible. Then we can go ahead and do event.getCurrentItem dot set item meta, then put our semicolon. So basically why we need the inventory click event again is because whenever we craft an item, for example, if you craft the Spirit Sceptre, it will appear at the crafting slot, and we will need to click on it in order to bring it into our inventory. And by that time we place it into our inventory, it would have already placed the random number on it and make it not stackable. Now we can move on with our final event at event handler. Yep, finally. And we're just going to call it on pickup player pickup item event our curly brackets. And now we are going to compare if our event.getItem .getItemStack .getItemMeta is not null, and event.getItem .getItemStack .getItemMeta .getLore is also not null. And then we are just going to press and enter for this, and event.getItem .getItemStack .getItemMeta .getLore .contains, and then we can go ahead and copy and paste this again. So we're just going to compare if it's a Spirit Sceptre. Then we're going to do the exact same thing, so we can copy and paste that in. And all we have to do is just change this to event.getItem.getItemStack. And also just change this to event.getItem.getItemStack. So we are done with all the add event handlers. Finally, now the last step would be to go into the main class and just register the event. So you can type this.getServer.getPluginManager.register event new. We're just going to type the name of the class, which is Spirit Sceptre, and put this because of the constructor, and comma this. And with that, we are technically done with the coding part. So we can just go ahead and build the plugin, and I'll see you in the test server. Alright, we are back in our test server, and if we go ahead and run the give command, it will give us a Spirit Sceptre. It will drop the item directly below us, and it doesn't stack. So we can go ahead and, for example, if we summon a Ravager, we can actually control our bat and hit the Ravager, and it will send a chat message to us. So that's that. That's it for today's video, I guess. So if you did enjoy this tutorial, please leave a like and subscribe. It'll be greatly appreciated. And if you do have any ideas for any future tutorials or plugins, feel free to leave a comment down below. And today is Mother's Day, so to all of the mothers out there, you all are amazing. And with that all said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you when I see you in the next video. Bye!